Thank you so much, sir. When the citation was going on, I was wondering who the citation was on. Is it me? Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate this. Thank you, my revered professor, Professor Julius-Adeoye. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here, and my appreciation to all my senior guests and my colleagues here. Thank you so much for the opportunity and to listen to me. Thank you, ma'am. When Prof called my attention to the celebration of Chief Oyin Adejobi, that most of us knew either very close or far away. I was wondering, how do I begin to talk about such a colossus in the Nigerian Yoruba traveling theatre? How much will I be able to say? How much did I got to know about him before his passing? But the truth was that for some of us who grew up in the mainland part of Lagos in the 70s and the 80s, I can tell you, so much about him. Even when what we knew come from the association we had on television, then on physical performance. But as a theater person, I had the opportunity of meeting many of the practitioners of the Yoruba traveling theater in the late 70s and the early 80s. For the fact that I grew up in Iwaya, in the area of Iwaya, that these practitioners actually stayed. I grew up in Ogundimu. Oh, and many of them stayed in the area we call Ilaje, just at the back of Ogundimu. And their performance was a weekend thing every Friday. Every Friday. And the house where the performance was going on was actually at Okosari's house. I was living, my cousin home number 11 Ogundimu, and Okosari's house was just behind. So every Friday, we're always there to watch. And so this stirred the interest in me to also, this art, I want to be part of it. Knowing so much of Osumari theater and Durola Dipo theater, because one of them stayed in my cousin's house in level Gundimu Street. And then at least more than 10 of these groups live in the wire. And they performed between that place and Odunfa in the Putemeta, which later become the center away from the wire. So I grew up as part of the traveling theater, and I climbed the stage in 1983 myself to be part of them. So I have a story to tell. I got to know Baba through Oyin Adejobi and Kotu Ashipa. They were so popular on the NTA station then every evening. Apart from him, we grew up watching Baba Salah. And we saw much of Baba Salah than we saw of Ogunde, except for the cinema. And then, because of this, I've taken time to put a little account down. The Nigerian Traveling Theatre, a phenomenon that defined what we come to know as theatre practice in Nigeria over a long time before the introduction of the literary theatre form at the University of Ibadan. But prior to this, there were theatre performances, even literary one around Lagos and from Glover Memorial to other smaller places. But the beauty of the theatre that interests someone like me was the traveling theatre tradition that was so popular in my own neighborhood. Every Friday, you will see the raffia mats used to condone the area of performance. And in the 70s, as young as I was, we had to find a way to peep through and watch the performances. So later, as I grew enough, and then being I would say, a member of the family. So it was easy for me to sit in front and then watch, and also sit and stand and also watch. So it was here I saw people like Ogabelu, Adebayo Salami, Sunday Omobolanle, Babapiluwe, and Jide Kosoko, and many of them, including Lalude. All of them were always coming around to this very area. Some of them that I may not be able to collect their name right now, but I remember Abobo Ababokosari, who try as much as possible to introduce many of us to part of the theater with a table tennis board in front of his house that we always go there to play the table tennis, as an opportunity for us to be very close to these prepared theater practitioners. So when I started seeing television on theater on television, and Baba Oyin Adejobi, something caught my attention. On the last speaker used the term physically challenged. Actually, that was what caught my attention, because he was always sitting, regard, and I was wondering, why is this actor always sitting and not standing and gesticulating like every other actor? So it caught my attention, and I started following consistently and following all the story. And Coach Ashipa and Orogun Adedigba was serialized on television at the time, that it is not a one-off or an episodic series. And it was at the point it was a series, 1 week in, 1 week out. But later it's more like serialized, watch the continuation. These were the soap that I grew up watching. And then seeing Baba and Mama Iya Osogbo. Those days you didn't know as Mama Osogbo, Iya Osogbo. It was much later that Iya Osogbo came into it. But she has a very beautiful way of speaking, because her voice was so tiny and piercing, not like the other ones that were so thick. So every time it's gets to our turn to speak, I'm always, we were likening her voice to that of Michael Jackson then, that was so tiny. Okay, Mama Michael Jackson, missing. Their performances actually ignited the the passion of the theater. And from the 1983 that I climbed the stage for the very first time, it has been a consistent upward trajectory for me to continue, because I wanted to emulate this repair theater practitioner. Opportunity on meeting those who train under Baba. I with your father, Professor Colloquium, who at the point was my head of department at Redeemers University. And for me, I love to document these practitioners. And he said, nígbà tí mo ìwà pẹ̀lú Baba Oyin Adejobi, mo join ìwọ̀n 1963 àbí 64. Mo ipò tó wà nínú gúrùpù wọn kò ní mo ṣe tán. Màá bá wọn kówó, màá ṣe mánéjà, àtúnṣeré. Ó ní ẹnìkan nígbà yẹn tó jẹ́ wípé ó jù mí lọ ní ọjọ́ orí, ṣùgbọ́n it was referring to Larry Paimon, who he considered as a senior and at the same time a contemporary in training under Oyin Adejobi. So when the stories of the 9 years he spent with Oyin Adejobi was something that I used extensively in my doctoral research. because I had to talk about the traveling theatre in Nigeria and the trajectory to the development of literary theatre in Nigeria, with emphasis on Professor Ahmed Yerima, who left here. But the beautiful aspect of it was that the traveling theatre that was so popular over the course of 40 years, from the 1940s to the early 1980s, disappeared, not because of what many people alluded to, say it is the television, but it wasn't with the television in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s. Some said it was because of the film tradition, and some say it's because of security. But be that as it may, I would say one of the major reasons from our position is lack of documentation of these practitioners. Lack of documentation. We tried as much as possible. We enjoyed their performances, but how much do we detail? How much do we write about them? They move the past. Many of us did not know that Oyin Adejobi belonged to the class of the Ogundes, not even of those when we are to label, we label Ogunde, Ogumola, and then we mention Jola Dipo. But where is Oyin Adejobi? What led his theater? On our own part, many of the things that the truth, some of them are put, they were on provide. Into television. I believe that still reside. They have look at the story Samuel Jackson. Over that it was manuscript was lost. That with the children, especially well, and then if you have more, the story can be wrote. And when we have that, it will afford we have opportunity to do it in our home various departments, university. Mention Oyin Adejobi, not as we employ you to help us so be able to join us.